Hey everybody, this is Professor Diffley. This is History 114. This is Module 3, Lecture Video 8. Welcome back. So we're talking about early Springfield here. We'll just start with the picture here. This is the artist's depiction of the fort as it was known. This is the Pynchon family home in Springfield, made out of brick. They're going to, it's called the fort because it was made out of brick. It is going to be a place where people sought refuge during King Philip's War. It is also, where is it located? Downtown Springfield, where the Student Prince restaurant is. Student Prince also used to have another part to it. It was more like a deli called the Fort, but it would have been down there on what is Main Street in Springfield today. That is actually the original layout of Springfield. Would have been along Main Street towards that side, and the houses would have been, back on Main Street with their land running towards the river because you needed river access to cross over to what is west today, West Side, West Springfield. But back then was still called Springfield there. So early Springfield. Let's get into this a bit more. Again, so Connecticut or Mass Bay. Even though Pynchon's coming from Mass Bay, he's originally going to lie with the Connecticut colony. And so for a while, it is going to be considered part of the Connecticut colony, but eventually he will go back over inside and with the Mass Bay. But again, originally, it is part of Connecticut here. It is a thriving trade and commercial center. Like I said, this was the goal of Springfield, of Agawam Plantation, was to be a trade and commercial center. This would be a hub of activity. You would have access to Albany. You would have access to Boston. You would have access to the Long Island Sound, Hartford, all the way down to New Haven, things like that. So this was a center of an area. Important early settlers, you get again, Samuel Chapin, the deacon, Miles Morgan. Miles Morgan was a surveyor. He held all sorts of positions, selectman, constable. Let's take a look down in the notes here, and it'll give you an idea of this. He's looked at as a defender of Springfield. He's going to lead the defense of Springfield and King Philip's Wars. There are also statues of Miles Morgan actually the next slide that you have seen in Springfield, which I'll just skip over to now real quick. I'll come back. That's Miles Morgan statue from Court Square downtown, right? That's what he showed with the gun and the stick there. He's supposed to be a defender, a soldier for the city. You're going to have Eliza Holyoke. Yeah, so the name should sound familiar. Eliza Holyoke. The idea is that he was one of the early surveyors out here, or early important townsmen. He is actually going to marry William Pynchon's daughter. Pynchon's eventually going to have to flee back to England because he's going to piss off everybody at the general court. He got the, and we'll get to that in a second, but he's got the distinction of having the first book banned in America and burned in America. What is the United States? And in Massachusetts, which becomes known at certain points in its history for its repression of books it doesn't agree with. But yeah, Holyoke, this is what the Holyoke Range is named after. Later, the city of Holyoke is there. Roger Ludlow, also, and this is, he wasn't really he was more from the Connecticut colony. He was here for a little bit, but it's not exactly, Ludlow is more named in honor of him. He wasn't actually here, but it is a name that you do see that pops up in the historical record. Again, there's a lot of this in the notes. Goals for the city, again, make it a major commercial hub and things like that. Springfield was different than other places, right? Pynchon was a little bit more lenient in the people he would allow. It wasn't as strict as the Puritan laws back east towards Boston and other places. He would even bring in people. He needed skilled labor out here, and so he was willing to overlook certain things. Going on in England this time is there's wars with Scotland. Cromwell, the leader of England, is capturing Scots and selling them. He's as indentured servants. Pynchon is happy, and the Scots will look down upon as well. Pynchon's happy to have them because they are bringing in skilled labor and things like that. So it was compared to other cities and other settlements at the time. It was a little bit more open. It was a little bit more raucous, things like that. But then again, it was a company town. You want to do anything, you need to go through the Pynchons. They ran this town. They were the largest landowners. You need anything, they own the stores. And so what we mean by as a company town is something that you're going to get in the 1800s or part of the 20th century is you wanted to work for a company, work for a mining company or a manufacturing. You had to live in their town. In some of these places, they would pay you in company money, things like this. Essentially, though, what Pynchon creates is a patron-client relationship with the people of the town. He's their patron, right? He gives them their way, and they're his clients, right? So the clients owe the patron, right, for their good fortune, what they've been given. But they also owe loyalty back to him, right? So you had to go through the Pynchons there. And some people could do well, but they own vastly more than anybody else there. And so you can read a little bit more about this. This is in the required readings and in the notes. First, fears of witchcraft, and the Puritans definitely feared witchcraft. But you have it here in Springfield's the Parsons, and in 1649, Mary Parsons, 1649, 1651. There was some of this witchcraft. Just same again. You're going to have it over in Salem, but you're also going to have it out here up to Northampton as well. Gave you a little reading on that. If you're interested in this sort of thing, there's the Stick offers, of course, history of witchcraft, and it's Professor Boston teaches it. He's really good. He knows a heck of a lot more than me on this, and he can really get into this history of it. It is offered pretty much every summer, and I believe every year we offer it at least once. But if you're interested in that, and he does cover that sort of thing. Again, there's the Miles Morgan statue. Early layout, I was talking about this. Again, you had the along Main Street is where most of the settlement was. Going up the hill towards what is now Stick. There actually used to be a stream going down, coming down what is now, runs right behind Stick is all that area. So you didn't really have much settlement back there. Everybody was closer to the river there. Again, I talked about the population was more diverse in the sense of compared to other Puritan towns and other Puritan settlements. And even with the diversity, you have Peter Swink, who I mentioned before, an indentured servant of African and Dutch origin, mixed origin. He begins, but this shows you about some of the opportunity there was in Springfield. He starts off as an indentured servant, eventually becomes a high-ranking member of the town, owns land, has a good. Another way you could tell where people were stood in town was where they sat at the church, right? How close to the front did they sit? Peter Swink does get a pretty good seat in there. He is actually part of the city government in that for a little bit there. Now, here's the thing. What about slavery in Springfield? Well, it existed from the beginning. Actually, at points, there were some slave auctions in Springfield there. Why? This is something that not often talked about with the Puritans, but they believed in slavery and they had slaves. There's even beliefs that Winthrop had slaves. The Body of Liberties, sort of a Mass-Bay Constitution, 1641, had already allowed slavery. And we believe the Pynchons had them too. If you go through the Pynchon and you look at their log books, their business books, which there's a fair deal of them that survive. It's where a lot of the information, that's how historians do, right? You piece it through all these pieces of information. But there are, everybody else has full names in the books, in their logs, their journals, their business logs, except for Old Tom, Rocco, and Sue. They're described in ways that they're not indentured servants. They were slaves, essentially slaves. Richard Blackleach, another one of these people who were definitely, most likely slaves. Again, there are plenty of historical evidence to show that there were, slaves were sold out of Springfield at times, and we know that the Puritans and New Englanders will own slaves. Again, slavery never becomes as big as it does in the South, but nonetheless, it was still here. People profited off slavery. This is a part of Springfield history that definitely is never, ever talked about. It's definitely been swept under the rug, partially because, as we get later, Springfield becomes really a center of abolition, anti-slavery much later. But here in the beginning, you definitely did have a fair amount of slavery. Here again, like I said, Pynchon, first book to get banned and burned in Boston. That used to be in the 20th century or mid-early 20th century. It was for authors, for musicians. It was a point of pride to get your work banned in Boston, and that was actually a phrase, banned in Boston. The puritanical view was that Massachusetts, New Englanders were very uptight and didn't like anything racy, and so. But yeah, Pynchon's essentially this gets into very religious ways, but he questions a lot of the Puritans' founding beliefs, right? He questions some of the really their. Or what is it? He questions their beliefs in many ways, and this gets him banned. He is recalled to general court. He sees things coming, So he gets it from gets out of Dodge, so to speak, moves back to England, and in response, Agawam Plantation is renamed after his home in England, Springfield, and that's how he ends up named that way. So now, John Pynchon, his son, takes over. He takes over Springfield leadership in 1651. Here's a depiction of him. Tremendous influence, even more than his father. By far the richest person in the valley, largest employer in the region. He monopolized most political positions. He's going to hold many of them at different times. He's actually going to be, share some of that with Holyoke. But yeah, he is really going, and even the Holyoke owned about a third of the amount of land and wealth that Pynchon had there. He's going to get his hands in everything first, trying to cattle drive of moving cattle, that sort of thing. This is going to be, again, that's going to lead to this idea of city as a city of first. Again, there's write-ups on him on Blackboard. And again, so we're going to have the Anglo-Dutch War. I said this before. I talked about this a bit before. You can see that there. So again, this is the Eastern North America there, right? You're going to see, you're going to have, this was originally Dutch, and this is all going to be English. They are going to take this over in the Anglo-Dutch Wars. So now, let's get into King Philip's War here. This is another major turning point in relations here. This is a map of, how King Philip's War went. And you can see this here. It might not display great, depending on the how far you blow it up. But if you go on Blackboard, this is to that one of the websites, the digital books that I said we're going to use at different points. You can get a closer view of this there. It actually doesn't fully show, but there are an attack on Springfield. It's not a major attack. Those are the smaller ones that are attacked in this. So King Philip War, an overview, bloodiest conflict of the era. Per capita, more people died in this than most other wars there. And you said this, so even though it seems like a smaller number than you might have heard in other wars, compared to the population, this was a devastating war. Centered in New England, it's between the colonists and their allies and the Wampanoag, Nipmuc, Pecumtuck, and Narragansett nations. Now, why the Pecumtuck and some of the groups from Connecticut River Valley? Well, again, the English are constantly expanding. The sort of writings on the wall that their way of life is losing and is gone. The English are not going to let them, really keep their way of life, and are looking to drive them off. It's named after the Wampanoag leader Metacom, sometimes Metacomet, and you've seen that in Metacomet, different place names, road names here. The colonists called him King Philip instead of by his name there. They viewed him as the leader of the above coalition, which he was there, but they're going to name it after him. And this is depicts all these different battles here and settlements that were attacked during King Philip's War. It is most of them, and it really was. It's a wide-ranging war. Most English villages, settlements are attacked in this. This conflict, again, very, very brutal in many ways. Causes English expansion, competition. There's limited resources, growing native debt. They become real, as they're relying on English goods, and the fur trade declined from overhunting. They can't pay back their debt, and the English, including Pynchon, start asking for their land in turn, right? So for taking their land as a result. Growing mistrust. Metacom's brother dies under mysterious circumstances. The colonists say it's a accident. Many believe he's murdered. In Plymouth, there's a questionable trial that some fur traders were killed, which you were, but whether or not it was actually these Wampanoag men, some of them are connected to Metacom. So there's a view that war is coming either way. And really, this is it. The colonists feared that Metacom were about to seek revenge, and so let's attack them first. It's really the way it goes. So details, you can read a lot on this there, but native raids on colonial farms, most of the destruction was property-based, minimum human casualties. As the war progressed, though, there were massacres on both sides. It just gets bloody and bad in each way. And we will actually pick up on this one at the Bloody Brook.